Hello, and welcome to 10 Points. The purpose of today's program is to spend some time with a prize-winning author from New Zealand. She'll be sharing with us the feeling for everyday life in New Zealand with its strong ties to the past. This rich and living past in New Zealand is a blend of two cultures, the native or Maori culture and the Celtic culture, which came to New Zealand with the first British settlers. The two cultures meet in The Bone People, a prize-winning book by Carrie Holm. In fact, with this book, she has won Britain's top honor for fiction writers, the Booker Prize. Before we take our trip south of the equator, let's take a look at our new words and phrases. The very first thing Carrie Holm describes is that interesting flux of land, sea, and air. Flux here means a flowing and changing movement. Carrie Holm also refers to the earth as a mother, saying it gives sustenance or food. The words nurtured and succored also mean giving food to. The word placenta is used when Carrie Holm explains the Maori idea of land. The growing child in the mother gets its food from the placenta. We'll hear the name Takarua. That's the Maori god of fish and the sea. This fish, native to New Zealand, is called whitebait, and our writer loves to fish for whitebait. She's an energetic whitebaiter. One person in the program who has read The Bone People says the language in the book is a bit ripe. Here, ripe means very strong and colorful. Carrie Holm also uses ripe language in today's program. She says, up the system, and up your view of me, where up the and up your are very impolite ways of saying, I couldn't care less about. We hear about the hard conditions under which the prize-winning book, The Bone People, was written. Winning the prize changed her life in a very positive way. She talks about the sweet and lovely aftermath. Aftermath meaning the resulting effects. The book has caused much reaction, including letters from people who have been abused as children. Abused means mistreated. Carrie Holm is described as a true Kiwi. Kiwi is a native bird of New Zealand, and Kiwis are nocturnal, meaning they are active at night. Kiwi is also a nickname for New Zealanders in general. Carrie Holm has been deeply inspired by the Maori tradition, and will even have the opportunity to hear her use some words and phrases in the Maori language. And also notice that she speaks with a very pronounced New Zealand accent. And now it's time to go to New Zealand, to the little village of Orakito in the land of the Kiwi, and the home of our prize-winning author of The Bone People.
We're on a strand, we're on a coastline, and it's that interesting flux of land and the sea and air that we've got going all the time. Perfect place for a fish and a writer interested in fluid fantasies. I think of myself as a fantasist, somebody who's drawing on very old myths. Myths have been around for a long time, whether they come from the Celtic side or from the Maori side. Myths that are inhabited by archetypes. But also, while I'm drawing on those, I'm refurbishing them, refashioning them. And I think of myself also as somebody who is a kai pūrākau, somebody who is continuing in a line of telling ancient stories, ancient legends. A lot of them happen to have modern dress and modern people. It's the sort of thing you can put down, for instance, on a tax return and confuse the hell out of people.
Te toto o te tangata he kai, te oranga o te tangata he whenua.
Papatūānuku is used both for the world as herself, the great round beast, and for here, the land that we are nurtured by and suckled by. And she's a mother in more ways than one. You might know that the Maori word for placenta is whenua, which is the same name as the land in general, not personalised. One of the things that used to be done, and is still done by a lot of Maori, is that you bury the whenua under a special tree. And so that child growing up always has a strong organic link, knows where its tree is. I was astounded to find when I was growing up, particularly when I first went to university, that people didn't necessarily think of the land as alive and as being a person in her own right, the person. I mean, I suppose that if we were being putting down ourselves, we could say we're some nasty kind of lice that afflicts Papatūānuku. But it strikes me as obvious. This place is rounded, is female, is what gives us our shape and nurtures us. It becomes the undervoice, the undercurrent for anything that I write. It's as though I'm talking in words and the land has her own chant, and that's coming through those words as well. And if you have an ear tuned to it, particularly say if you're a New Zealander, you hear it. I can talk about the good feeling that Okarito has for, roughly the next 20 weeks. To me, it's a shadow, a friendly shadow, a good shadow, a potent shadow to the light of Moiraki, which is where I was partly brought up and is still the place where my heart stands. It's my turanga waiwai ngako, so to speak. It's occupied land. It's somehow warm and friendly land, despite being ascetic. It doesn't say, go away, we don't want you.
Ka mate kai ka tahi, ka ora kai ka rua.
But I was born and bred to be a whitebaiter. When I first arrived on the West Coast in 1970, I came over as a postie of all things and found that a lot of the local postal staff spent their lunch times checking their nets, and particularly the people that I was working with and the people I was drinking with. Whitebaiting was be-all and end-all for the sort of a couple of months of the year that it went on.
When we were kids with Billy's bait, she'd wash Williams for him too.
See them wriggling in? It works. Yes, I've read the book. I will have to read it again to take it all in, but I did enjoy the book. Language is a bit ripe.
Oh, I liked it after I'd finished it, but I had to get right to the end before I really understood it.
There they are, struggling in from the sea, all ready to, repeat a life pattern that's been established for thousands upon thousands of years, and we get in there with a net. I sometimes think the gods do exactly the same thing. There you are, trundling upstream, all happy. You got her. I think I'm not altogether convinced of the existence of an overruling and overwhelming single entity, labelled God or deity or whatever. But little departmental gods I can understand and appreciate very much. Things like Takaroa are ferociously attached to all the creatures of the sea. I can understand why the old people, for instance, were very careful to offer the first part of their catch back to Takaroa. make the right appeasing noises when you voyaged out. And I can play takaroa with my characters fast and loose. If they make the right noises back to me, then I don't kill them off. Oh, I think I'm joking.
Mr. Francis Houston. See, those ones are dead.
Well, I think she's great fun to go out with. And she likes champagne, so do I.
Well, I suppose if you stretched it, made it a metaphor for what I do, yeah, I fish for ideas. I fish for characters and dreams. I use words as sort of both bait and hook and net. One way or the other, yeah, I fish a lot.
But she really is a West Coaster, though she wasn't a born West Coaster. But she makes a jolly good West Coaster.
She's a very quiet person, though. And she loves her white maiden.
Well, I never wrote it as a, in one fell swoop. I grew up with that book from the time I was 18 into my early 30s. While I was writing it and developing the characters and things like that. But I never thought of it as being a success or as being anything of moment. It was just a story that I wanted to tell, characters that I wanted to put out in the world, some spiritual ideas I wanted to share with people.
I read The Bone People when it was in manuscript, and it was a wet day and I just stayed in bed and read right through it and really enjoyed it. But she said to me, what do you think of it? And I was looking for some tactful way to say, well, given the New Zealand reading public, I don't think you're going to make any money out of it, which is what I told her eventually, and I'm delighted to have been proved wrong.
I lived for 2 years in that garage. I did 2 major rewrites of The Bone People there. It's a corrugated iron garage, 10 by 12, with no facilities. Had a small muster stove in it, an earth floor. When it used to get wet, the rain would seep in and you'd be standing there in your gumboots with a host of drowned earthworms floating around the top, pounding away on a typewriter and wondering what the hell you were doing. This is sweet aftermath.
It's the style of writing that probably won the prize. That's what won the prize, the style of writing and the variation of the recipes and all this sort of thing that you don't find anywhere else. And it's a pretty big thing to give someone like her a prize like that in a remote part of the world.
All this lovely aftermath is like I'm still having a dream in my garage, an extended dream. And shortly I'll wake up and discover the horrid reality again. I mean, I find it quite insulting that people keep mistaking me for Kerwin, or thinking that the story in The Bone People is a real story that I've put down on paper. And they ask coy little questions like, as I said, how are the 3 of you getting on these days? Well, bloody hell. There's aspects of Kerwin that I use because I wanted a touchstone character. And I mean, I do smoke a pipe. I am slightly eccentric, and I do live in a relatively remote place, but it's not a town. And I sure as hell am not Kerwin.
Taku pohiri e re atura, I te hiku o te ika, te puhu o te whenua, te pane o te motuki, te whakawhiti te ngai rakawaki, te waipo namure. E iaka te, e karamai koe, I te pohiri tanga, Taumanu karamai koe, I te pohiri tanga taumanu. He ti wai waka hanga maui, au e ti ori ramehena. He ti wai waka hanga maui.
It's been a pleasure that I never expected to get. And some of it is very, very poignant indeed. I get a lot of letters from people who've been abused as children, for instance, or from people who've been engaged in abuse. Some of it's absolutely delightful, like the woman, for some reason or other, who was motivated in Wellington to sell her house. She'd always wanted to do this, say goodbye to her grown-up family and start travelling around New Zealand. And she's called into Okarito. And some of it's completely potty. You know, you get letters from nuts. And that's also interesting in its own way. I'm always very polite to the nuts. Nothing from the tax department. Hooray!
If you want anything from Kerry, you better ask her in the evening, because she's like a true Kiwi. She's nocturnal. She works all night. She writes all night. And you don't see her around in the early morning. That's what she does for sleeping.
He karoro inu tai koau.
I would spend about 20% of my life at this window, watching the sea. At least that's what I'd say I was doing. But really I'm watching theatre inside the head as much as anything. When I announced at age 6 that I was going to be an artist when I grew up, or whenever any idiotic adult asks you that question, it always strikes me as a particularly bizarre one to ask a child. What are you going to be when you grow up? I used to say an artist, and I very quickly learned that this evoked disbelief and a kind of covert disapproval. So I learned to tack on very quickly and a nurse, and eventually to tack on or a nurse. And this was greeted with coos and acceptance. Oh goody, the party line at work again. That's next door, and it's going to keep on going, I'm afraid, until they answer it. So I did things like pick tobacco and pick raspberries and work in a woolen mill to fill in time, and then bowed to pressure from family and others and went to Canterbury University and was a law student for 4 terms. Dropped out and became a very good fish and chip cook to get money so I'd have time to do what I really wanted to do, which was write and paint and fish and walk beaches and dream, etc. Exactly what I'm doing now. The land to me is there's us alive and living out our lives on it. There's the land herself as the awesome and continual but friendly presence behind. And then there's the dead who also inhabit the land. But the Maori have the idea of ancestral continuum, that you're never actually just yourself as an individual. You always, as the phrase goes, you carry your ghosts on your shoulders. You're always your ancestors built up in you. I've never had occasion to disbelieve this, and I've had many reasons, not least my own dreams, to believe it very thoroughly, that we do share a lot of memories and experience of our ancestors. Aside from that, there's a whole range of mythical, quote-unquote, beasts. I'm not quite sure about that mythical part. I think they might be around. Taniwha, Iriawaru, Ponaturi, Patuparihi, or Turihi. The classic one that's supposed to live in the wilds of bush areas, the Mairolo, the wild man. Lots of them. Ogres and fairies and things like Taniwha are bound. Fairy stories from the top of the world, because in the old people's eyes, and certainly most of us today, you go south to the top of the world if you want to have a top. And you go north, you're going down the bottom. Very clear and explicit. I've said quite openly and publicly on a number of occasions that I'm not quite sure that I'm really telling stories or simply being the medium through which the story is passed. And that leads on to something else, of course. Whether you're actually creating stories or whether you are somehow plagiarising somebody's life somewhere else bothers me occasionally. I can think of several of my characters I actually wouldn't want to meet walking down the street. Novels seem to have, and this is only from the sparse experience of having written one and being involved in another, seem to have a different kind of a timetable, and it's dependent for me on how lively your characters are becoming. I know my characters are successful for me when they start to appear in my dreams and they start to do things by themselves. And then I know, right, you're away, you're launched, I can concentrate on the storyline now. And there is that time when they're becoming lively that you start more or less asking them questions. Why do you behave like that? Why don't you sit down? Why do you actually like drinking rum and condensed milk? You fly kites. Why? It's the sort of the combination of why and what ifs. Whys of the characters and what ifs when you've got them embedded in a storyline. So at the moment I have literally 3 briefcases full of notes, about 1,200 pages all told, and I have about 300 drawings and a couple of full-scale paintings. And that's bait. There's room for determined people now to say, well, up the system, up your view of me, forget about your preformed idea of what a woman should be. I can do this, I will do this. And we've got the space and the opportunity to do it. And there is a most interesting meld going on now between the 2 major cultures of New Zealand. And here we are, right in the middle, able to be bridges, to in some small way be definers, to actually be creators in an extraordinary and large sense. I mean, maybe in 200 years the world will be a cinder. Maybe in 200 years funny old-fashioned writers will be completely irrelevant. Writing may have gone. Literacy may be a thing of the past. But maybe people will be able to look back and say, aha, there in the 20th century there were these people and we are the way we are now because they gave us new eyes, new ways of looking at things.
Over the lip of wax, a river spills. Flame reddens, flickers, flares, stills, and the river congeals.
They want to make a film of this, you know, and I've said to her, oh, tell them $1 million cash, that's what I'd do. You know, do what you like, give us $1 million, that's it. No, she doesn't want it that way. She wants the film made exactly her way. So she's sublet something and she's got control over the whole thing.
The thing that's impressed me with Kerry really is she's had fame all over the world, but she hasn't really let it change her very much. She's enjoyed her money, which is nice.
And there's none of the pressure that I had when I was writing The Bone People either, which was basically that of money. Money equals time for anybody who's creating anything. 95% I'd estimate of a writer's time is spent playing games in your head, wandering along the beach, cooking, doing everyday living. And in the meantime, one small part of your head is brewing new characters or finding new things for them to do. And there's enough money roaming around at the moment to give me time to play with the next book. Very few pressures. I think I started life being a very ancient child, and I'm getting younger. And certainly in one respect. Physically, of course, the deterioration set in long ago. Getting wiser is another matter altogether, and it's not necessarily for me associated with age. I don't have any hopes or expectations. I don't have any ambitions either, but I'd like to keep on enjoying life at the same level I do now and finish off a book or 14. My Scots nana always used to say, we'll do this tomorrow, God willing. And while I'm not a believer as she was, yeah, let's hope the future is good. I've had amazing letters from people overseas who said, what you've written has made us feel homesick because we can hear New Zealand. And that to me is sort of compliment of compliments. But the compliment should be paid to the land, to the sea, to that amazing mix that they are, rather than to somebody who's a singer.
Thank you, Carrie Holm. You've made New Zealand sing a bit for us, too. This was the 10th and final program in our series 10 Points, and we do hope you make it a point to continue with your good work in English. This is Peter Miller, for all of us here at 10 Points, saying goodbye and good luck with all your future studies.